Soulfist are an advanced class available to martial artists that bring Dragon Ball Z vibes to the game. They have both melee and range skills as well as a unique class identity that is called Hype. As a Soulfist, you can enter 3 different levels of Hype. The higher the level, the greater the buffs, and the less of the time you can stay in that mode for. After you let a Hype level duration run out, you'll enter Hype level 0, and this is basically a Hype recovery mode. During Hype level 0, you will use minimal skills only and need to wait for a full reload. The basic playstyle of the Soulfist is to release all of your damage during your Hype mode windows, with even more focus on your awakening ability called World Decimation, which makes you gather energy from your surroundings whilst holding up both hands to the air before dropping the biggest spirit bomb in the game. Keep in mind though that this ability has a really long casting animation, so you kinda need to predict your target's positioning before staking everything on this card. But being ranged and melee at the same time makes this class ultimately not the easiest one to play, but with enough practice and right timings to throw the biggest explosion in the game, it will definitely be worth it. So if you're looking for a flashy, fast-paced class with decent AoE, good party buffs, and most importantly the strongest and hardest hitting single target damage in the game, then the Soulfist is for you. When it comes to your advanced martial artist classes, the biggest difference between a Soulfist and any of the others is that Soulfist has the most range that provides ultimate flexibility. Of course, that doesn't mean she's a complete ranged champion like a sorceress, since she as well has lots of melee skills that can also be used as gap closers. Though having more range means almost always that you'll deal more damage than classes that have to jump right into action like the Striker for example. On top of that, the Soulfist is also not as fast as the War Dancer or Glaivier, or as slow and heavy as the Scrapper, meaning she's a little bit of every martial artist, just with the strongest awakening ability in the game. The Soulfist is a burst-oriented class that buffs herself up to a final Hype mode level 3, and then releases as much damage as possible during that phase. To be confident in hitting all of her skills during that DPS window, you have to pre-plan your rotation, and in the best case, know all crucial enemy mechanics. So typically you start by using 1 or 2 movement or sub-secondary DPS skills at Hype level 1, and then jump into the next Hype mode at level 2. You then stay at this Hype mode until it almost runs out, and you enter your final Hype level 3. There you want to immediately activate Energy Release as an opener to buff yourself and your teammates with increased damage reduction and damage overall. As the window of Hype level 3 doesn't last very long, you really want to make sure your Awakening is the first active skill you want to use, as it's the hardest hitting and therefore the most important skill in your kit that takes a very long time to cast. So again, always make sure you enter this rotation when you know your target's mechanics, as you won't be moving when casting, or else you may end up throwing that gigantic dense ball of energy into simply nothing. Soulfists have 2 pretty distinct playstyles and can focus more on a faster and straightforward playstyle with their energy overflow build. This needs you to constantly use skills that you make the most of your damage enhancement when you keep your energy meter low. But you can also focus on your robust spirit build that needs you to position more frequently and time your skills better, as you'll often find yourself running around in Hype stage 0. But this ultimately lets you deal the highest numbers. Due to their good buff kit and somewhat high mobility, you'll spend most of your time running around, waiting for your cooldowns and hype meter to reload whilst grouping up mobs to make sure you use your few burst skills on the biggest mob group possible. As a back attacker, you want to also use your mobility to get behind a single target like a boss and release your harder hitting skills like Merciless Pummel from behind. Your Awakening is far and away the highest single target damage ability in the game, so you'll be using it quite often and feeling the pain of missing. Moving on to PvP. The mid-range nature of the Soulfist also wants you to stay, well, mid-ranged. One reason for this is that you'll have just enough space to poke your enemies with range skills like Force Orb, while always being in range for a team or follow-up engage to properly make use of your melee skills as well. Another reason for you to stay in mid-range is that this way you'll always apply the synergy buffs to your team, as your buff range is limited, and having you staying right in the centre between back and front line is the best spot for that. Since your damage will all be done in your Hype level burst windows, you also want to focus on that by making sure you activate Hype level 3 if you see a perfect window to fully engage. A good engage moment, for example, is if the enemy team is clustered in one place or an enemy target already used a stand-up dash, making it impossible to escape from your full-out burst combos. Let's take a look at some of the Soulfist's core abilities. Flash Step is the main movement skill, as it will rapidly move you to the target location. On top of that, it's also used to buff your attack damage, so run this skill regardless of whatever type of engraving you take. Energy Release is your main synergy skill that provides more attack damage and more damage reduction for yourself and your party. Having this buff makes you want to use it either before the engage or right after to make sure you and your team get the most out of your clashes. Run this skill regardless of which type of engraving you take as well. Merciless Pummel is one of the Soulfist's primary DPS when it comes to normal skills. It lets you move forward delivering a punch-kick-punch where each attack does more damage than the previous one. Shadowbreaker has a quick animation making you strike the ground twice and has the best weak point and stagger built into your kit. Heavenly Squash is a mid-range DPS skill that drops massive palms at the target location, which deal a good amount of damage and has some decent stagger built into it as well. The same goes for Force Orb. This mid-range DPS skill makes you shoot 3 energy balls that knock back targets hit. As with all classes, the Soulfist has access to 2 awakening abilities. World Decimation is pretty much why you pick this class, as it's basically a Genki Dama from Dragon Ball Z. The Soulfist raises her hands above her head and concentrates enough energy to make it explode in a large AoE area. Ideally, you only use this skill when you know your target won't be moving, as its animation time alone is 3 seconds long, which may not sound too long in theory, but it definitely is. Annihilating Ray is your second source of pride, as it's basically Goku's Kamehameha. The Soulfist gathers energy here as well, but you need to release it whilst holding the skill. After you release the hotkey, you'll get help from a comrade's soul, and your key ray will deal increased damage. In terms of play rate, most people use World Decimation though, as it's not a holding skill but mainly because it's the highest single target damage skill in the entire world of Arcesia, catapulting you to MVP in every raid, as long as you hit it. Every Lost Ark class has access to engravings that will focus your playstyle in one particular direction. For Soulfist, you will choose between Robust Spirit and Energy Overflow. Robust Spirit makes your Soulfist become a burst machine, as it lets you skip hype level 1 and 2 whenever you use your identity to power yourself up, meaning you'll always hover between your strongest hype level 3 and the weakest hype recovery mode 0. The playstyle with this engraving shifts from managing your energy to more like lining up your hard hitters to release them all at once in that small window that you enter whilst in the highest stage of hype. When you choose this engraving, you want to focus on the specialization stat first to increase your damage of your awakening, decrease the downtime of recovery mode, and of course enhance the damage during your key explosion. After that, you want to focus on crits to try and pulverize anything that gets caught up inside your awakening explosion. Energy Overflow speeds up your playstyle quite a bit, as it kinda lets you ignore your energy bar since you can't get it to 0 anymore. This allows you to spam your skills whilst increasing your damage if you keep your energy bar below 30%. It makes it a bit more consistent and hence reliable damage type of playstyle, but it comes at the cost of disabling your additional energy recovery whilst in hype. That being said, you want to make sure to stay at hype 2 most of the time to deal consistent damage output, and then let it run out to hype 0 so that your downtime won't be as long. You only enter hype stage 3 if your awakening skill is ready to be used, as you'll suffer greater down the time the higher the hype level you were in. When you choose this engraving, you want to focus on the swiftness stat first to keep cooldowns as low as possible, helping you rotate through your skills in a more frequent manner to keep your energy bar low at the same time. After that, crit is your second best stat to build upon. Most Soulfist players do run the Robust Spirit build, but both engravings are similar in terms of viability, so run whatever feels more enjoyable for you. To sum it up, being a Soulfist means you need to know the boss mechanics, because in case you do miss your burst window upon activation of hype 3, you will not only lose a lot of damage, but you'll also need to wait until you fully recover from hype 0. That should be everything that you need to know to get your journey started on Lost Ark. Don't forget to head on over to our website at mobalytics.gg to find out all sorts of other content including class guides, boss breakdowns and plenty more.